Hey guys, welcome back to Paradise Lost in Books. I'm Christy, and today I am bringing you my book talk on Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I am probably the last person on the Lunar Chronicles train, but I'm going to go ahead and give a spoiler-free synopsis anyway, in case there's someone lurking about there under a rock like I previously was, that doesn't know anything about this series. So this book is set in the future. There have been lots of scientific advances. It's very sci-fi fantasy. There are humans who are cyborgs, not like robots, but humans with human feelings and skin and blood that have metal parts, and they're just part of our society. So there's that aspect of it. Also, in case it wasn't obvious, these are fairy tale retellings, which again, I feel like everyone knows, but Cinder is Cinderella, like the shoe and the cinder, like it's obvious, right? Anyway, so we have this fairy tale retelling. We have our main character, Lynn Cinder, who is a cyborg. She has a metal hand and a metal leg and a control panel in her head, and this goes through her kind of journey of self-discovery, and we are introduced to this other race of people called the Lunars, who are these people that populate the moon. They have scientific powers. They're not magic powers. They make sure to clearly delineate that, but their magic, quote unquote, is based in something to do with bioelectricity, magnetism kind of stuff. So they can manipulate the way that you see things using the power of science. So she has some confrontations with them. She has some confrontations with the Emperor of New Beijing, and there's not really a whole lot more than that I can say. I mean, you can probably figure a lot of it out based on the Cinderella fairy tale, but there are some pretty cool things that are different. So, you know, if you like spacey stuff, sci-fi fantasy stuff, fairy tale retellings, and you also don't like being late to parties, I suggest you read this book because everyone else has read it except for, you know, me until now, and you if you haven't read it. So, you know, I'm leaving the I haven't read this party, and we're going to talk about this book. So go away if you haven't read it, and come back when you read it, and we'll talk about it, okay? So, the Lunar Chronicles. I was hesitant to pick this up for a while. I don't know why. I think I was worried it was being overhyped for me because I kept seeing it and I kept seeing it and I kept seeing it all over the booktube community and hearing about it all the time and seeing it everywhere in bookstores. And I was just like, man, fairy tale retellings are so overdone. I feel like I'm going to be disappointed. But I wasn't. So let me start out by talking about things I did like. I love this world that Marissa Meyer has built. Like, this is such an in-depth, thoughtful, well-built world. I love that we're kind of dropped right into New Beijing with Cinder, and we just kind of have to figure it out as we're going. It's like, there's cyborgs, there's also androids, like actual robots, not to be confused with cyborgs. They're two different things. The world has kind of come together. Planet Earth is kind of one big superpower now, and they're kind of joined against the people of the moon. The world is just really well done. Like, I think it's a very believable future for Earth to have all of this technological advancement, and there were still relics from our past, so it didn't feel like she had made a super futuristic world with like hover cars and jetpacks and all of that kind of stereotypical type stuff. Like, you know, there were cars in the junkyard from when we have cars today. Like, that stuff exists, which I thought was really cool. It made it all feel like it flowed together really well. So I'm really enjoying the world as a whole and looking forward to seeing how it continues to progress going forward. And I love that she's a mechanic. Like, I feel like it was a pretty obvious thing to do with the Cinderella character, to flip the dynamic of her being, like, she's still hardworking, but it's more by choice than because she has to. I mean, she does have to. Her stepmother takes her money and stuff, but you can tell that Cinder enjoys being a mechanic, and it's labor that she wants to do. It's something that she's good at, and it's something that she prides herself in, and it's a useful skill set for her to have. And there's other really cool inversions that they do of the fairy tale. Like, for instance, she still has the stepmother and 2 sisters, but the way she came into the family is really different. She was adopted by the father, and then he died from the plague, the letumosis that's ravaging the planet, and her stepmother resents her, never really includes her as part of the family. And I really like that she gets along with one of the sisters. Of course, that means that something awful was going to happen to that sister, but I really liked that she had a good relationship with one of the sisters, and that she also had Aiko, her android, so she wasn't totally alone. It made her situation less sad, even though I still hated her stepmother. Like, in some ways, I think Cinder's stepmother is worse than the stepmother in the original fairy tale, because she's just so blatantly hypocritical. And I thought it was weird that when she sends Cinder away to, like, the cyborg testing thing, that I was like, you're sending away your one source of income. Like, you're constantly bitching about not having money and how Cinder should be working harder to make you money, and yet you're willing to send her away? Like, what? Okay, that's weird. And another inversion that I really liked is that the prince isn't this distant figure that she doesn't really know about and all that stuff. Like, we're introduced to him immediately, like right at the beginning of the book. And I thought that was pretty cool because we get to see him grow and develop as a character, and we really get to know him, which is pretty neat because in the original Cinderella fairy tale and in the Cinderella Disney movie, he's not ever really a developed character. He's just kind of the prince. He's just kind of there. So I thought it was really cool that he becomes his own person in this story. The plague outbreak, oh my god, like that was a whole nother element that I didn't see coming, and it sucked so much that Peony died, and I hated it so much. I know that in storytelling we're all used to like the last minute, barely freaking not getting what you want kind of thing, but it still sucks when you've really developed that emotional attachment to those characters. And I just hated it. It felt very Romeo and Juliet in a way. Just a couple more seconds would have made all the difference. Like, she was almost there with the antidote, and stupid freaking Peony had to die. I know it's not her fault. She's not the stupid one, but oh, it's so frustrating. I just, ugh. Yeah. The plague is actually a really important part of everything because it explains why, a large part anyway, of why everyone hates the Lunars so much. It's not just their magic powers, so to speak, and it's not just Levana, but also this plague that they brought with them trying to escape from the moon. The plague was spread by Lunars, which is almost a political commentary in a way. It really highlights that tense relationship between the moon and Earth, and in some ways that's kind of like countries that invade other countries. Like, you know, when Europeans came to America before it was America and spread all these diseases and kind of violently imposed their will on people. And in some ways, you know, the glamour thing is kind of relevant too, because they tricked the natives into thinking that they were going to do nice things for them, but really they ended up, you know, screwing them over. Speaking of Levana is just a crazy bitch. Like, she is just the worst of the worst, and I can tell right off that she's going to be the evil queen from Snow White in a way. Like, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from her, even though it was pretty easy to figure out that Cinder is the princess, so that doesn't really jive with the fairy tale mythology. But I know that there's a book called Fairest, and that's Levana's story. And since Cinder is Princess Celine, Cinder is kind of her other identity, so I feel like, I haven't gotten this far in the story obviously, but I feel like once we learn more about Cinder and she accepts who she is and makes it known that she's going to morph into more of a Snow White character, with Levana being the evil queen. So that's kind of what I'm predicting. But Levana is truly scary. Like, she's crazy and over the top and almost hard to take seriously, but she's still scary. Like, every scene with her in it in this book, I was just like, I don't like this woman. She's creepy. She's creepy and I don't like her, okay? She freaks me out. She makes my skin crawl. And every time that you saw her getting into someone's head, it was just like, huh. You know, and I think maybe it was so creepy because there was a scientific explanation for it. Like, just the thought that one day science could permit somebody to mess with your brain and make you think things you don't want to think was just like, huh. I don't like it. The ending was such a wild ride. Aiko being shut down really sucked. Like, that was really devastating to see. Her deciding to go to the ball was a great moment, but the whole ball scene was just nuts. Sometimes I had a hard time following what was going on because there was so much going on. I liked the realism of her interaction with Kai. I thought his reaction to finding out she was a cyborg was really realistic. He wasn't immediately like, ew, gross, get away from me, but he was obviously like shocked and didn't really know what to think. And then the realism of him picking his country over her, I thought was really refreshing, because I feel like a lot of times in these types of stories, especially fairy tales, it's like everything for love. Love is the end all be all, and you know, I would do anything for the girl I love, and that's not what happened here. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that eventually a relationship is going to develop between them, but he didn't pick her over his country. He was like, I'm sorry, but I have to give you to Levana for the sake of my country so that she doesn't like destroy everything. And I really enjoyed getting to know his thought process and understanding where he was coming from, because that just made the story even more believable and made me feel more invested, because I felt like I followed his train of thought and could really get on board with what he was doing, even though it sucked for our main character. Overall, I did really like this book, but I'm going to discuss a couple of things I didn't like. This is really more of a character thing than anything, but it really irked me how much Cinder looked down on Lunars, because it's very hypocritical of her. Like, she's looked down on for being a cyborg, and we get a lot of her backstory, which was really cool. We find out how she became a cyborg, how she came from Luna and escaped from the fire where Levana was trying to kill her and all this stuff. So she becomes a cyborg and she has to live this whole life being treated like a second-class citizen, but then she looks down on Lunars without ever trying to understand where they're coming from, and that really bothered me. I mean, it's good that she had a flaw. Good characters have flaws. They're not perfect, and she's a teenager. It's not the writing her that way that bothers me. I think it makes her a good character, but it's just something about her that bothers me, that she is a hypocrite in the way that she looks down on Lunars. She stereotypes them and thinks that they're all these horrible monsters, and she has a really hard time reconciling that she is a Lunar. And like, I get it, because they brought this disease and Levana is really freaking scary, but it just strikes me as being really like stupid. Like, you're a second-class citizen in the eyes of most people, and I would just think that someone like that would have some sympathy for other ostracized peoples. I didn't really like how easy it was to figure out that she was the princess. Like, so much of this book is well written that when Princess Celine was first mentioned, I was like, oh, it's Cinder. Like, it's so obvious, and the reveal is just super anticlimactic because it's just so easy to figure out. And like, I mean, I'm not criticizing the author for that, because that's hard to do. It's really hard to plant clues and not make it obvious, but also not make it tropey and stereotypical. So I'm not complaining that much, because it was still a really well done book, but I just wish it had maybe taken me a little bit longer to put the pieces together and figure out that Cinder is Princess Celine. Overall, I gave this book about a 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was a really well done idea with a fantastic world, really rich, interesting characters who keep the story moving at a fast pace. It was never really laggy. It was never hard to get through. I was interested in it from the very beginning, but even with all that, I like it and I want to keep reading it, but it didn't quite have that spark that made me like, I need to finish this book. I have to find out what happens. It's a very well done series, and I'm definitely going to keep reading it, and I definitely want to see what happens. Most of the reason why I'm not rating this book higher is more just about the feeling I got from it. It was like, oh, that was a nice story, as opposed to like, I loved this story. You know what I mean? I think the writing is great. I think the characters are great, and the plot is interesting, and I really want to see where it keeps going. And I would definitely recommend this book for any fairy tale lovers out there. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video, guys. I hope that if you enjoyed this book talk that you will give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and please let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the Lunar Chronicles. Do you agree with my opinions? Do you have different opinions? No spoilers though, please. I'm currently in the middle of Scarlet and I don't want to be spoiled, okay? So until next time, guys, bye!